Borathang athletes, and welcome to 2000 AD, the Creator Tapes. And we've got a fantastic guest for you this month, Chris Weston, who's one of my personal favorite 2000 AD artists. Started off on Judge Dredd. What an incredible beginning to a career. You've got Indigo Prime, Killing Time. He then went over to America and worked on The 12 with J. Max Krasinski, The Filth with Grant Morrison, and so many other great comics. And for this episode, we sit down and just do a nice overview from his apprenticeship with the legendary Don Lawrence. And it's so interesting to see how that's impacted on the rest of his career, all the way through to what he's working on now. His own struggles with how he views his own art, and the pursuit of the perfect job. Yeah, really looking forward to this one, athletes. And we're talking to Chris Weston after the theme music. So, Chris, thank you very much for coming along to the Creator Tapes. It's I realized that the last time we did like a proper in-depth interview was like 2012.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. Well, I'll see what I can, what I can remember from the past. It's so much of it is obliterated.
I think this is one of the problems of like the further along you go, and I mean, John Wagner has said this when I've interviewed him in the past, that
Yeah.
an awful lot of like the period that people want to know about, like the classic kind of early
Yeah.
golden age 2000 AD stuff, he's got no memory of it whatsoever,
No.
really.
Well, I can't. I can never remember the sequence of things. So, like, I can never remember. Did I draw Lucifer before the filth or after? I mean, I probably couldn't tell you the answer now. I suspect it was slightly before, but the whole sequence of things, because I know I came back to 2000 to draw Cannon Fodder after being away working in the States, but I can't remember. I wouldn't be able to tell you where Cannon Fodder slots into the chronology of my life, really, or what I was doing at the time.
You're very fortunate because my interview style jumps around all over the place. So there's no in any kind of chronological order. Though I always do start at the beginning and try and work through. But yeah, I mean, I've been wanting to do like a bit of an in-depth one with you for a while, because you've over the last few years, you've kind of had a bit of a return to 2000 AD over sort of the last 5 years or so, working primarily with Rob Williams on Judge Dredd, and not to start an interview at the end, but how have you found that? Because it feels very natural, because you had the collection that got the stories that got turned into the Control collection, the Judge Dredd Control collection. Have you found that? Because you started your career on Judge Dredd. How is it now kind of coming back to it? Is it like putting on an old suit, or is it, are you finding sort of bits in the pockets that you'd kind of forgotten were there?
Well, I always feel like it's, when I'm away from 2000, I've got unfinished business, because as I go away and I progress a bit more as an artist in a different area, I always think, well, now I can bring this, the new stuff I've learned back with me to 2000 AD. I'm always in constantly pursuing the idea of doing the best Judge Dredd strip I can possibly do. And as I say, it's constantly unfinished business, really. I never really feel I've nailed it, but mainly because you change as an artist, and as I say, new things come on board. You think, well, if only I could have used these skills back then. It would have been better.
Because there's with Judge Dredd, it's one of those strips where, particularly if you were a fan growing up, if it's a character
And I was,
you're invested in, I suppose coming to it and having that expect, this is going to be the best ever. I'm going to do an
Mm.
amazing job.
Yeah, yeah.
You're bringing all this baggage
Mm.
with you to a degree. You've got, well, we'll talk about your influences in a minute, but all the people who influenced you kind of sat on your shoulder, and you're thinking about their work,
Oh,
and
yeah.
do you find that?
Oh, definitely. And also, uh, the way I want to do Dread is constantly changing as well. I mean, in the past, as you could probably see, that I was more sort of on the Dread spectrum. On one end, you've got Bolland, and the other end, McMahon, and every artist is somewhere on that spectrum. You've got the hyper realistic Brian Bolland thing, and then the verging on abstract McMahon at his most extreme, and every single Dread artist is somewhere on this scale. And I think my position is changing. I mean, in the past, I'd just wanted to draw like Brian Bolland, but the older I get, the more, and even Rob has said this, like, your Dread's looking a bit more McMahon these days. And I said, well, I'm glad you said that, because, it's kind of deliberate. My taste in Dread is changing.
Yeah, I mean, Chloe and I are going to have to do an entire episode debating your notion of this scale, because that's a very bold statement. Uh, Particularly choosing the abstract McMahon as well. But,
But
but
I did say at his most extreme. Yeah.
but I kind of want to go back to it again, because we'll talk more about Dread as we go along, I'm sure. But I want to kind of go back to your beginnings, because interestingly, for me, you were a forces kid, weren't you?
Yeah.
Your dad was in the RAF.
Yeah. In the the army. He was
Oh,
in
in the
Ream.
Army Air Force,
No,
right?
no, no. In the army,
Oh,
not the Air Force.
I've written down Air Force like twice
No,
here.
no, no. He was in REME, the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers. Basically,
Oh, right, okay.
the ones that fix the tanks when they break down.
Right, I see, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, even just a cursory glance at your bio, even though I get something like the Air Force wrong, you born in Germany, moved from
Yeah,
place to place when you were
lived in
younger.
Cyprus. I didn't
Yeah.
really, unless I was staying with my grandparents, didn't really get to see much TV when I was younger.
Mm.
So my main sources of entertainment were reading comics or going to the cinema, and or drawing my own comics. I used to draw my own little comic strips. I used to draw these things. My own comic strip called the Dustbin Army, which is about these sentient dustbins that were in the army. I'm sure I've got them somewhere.
Please, please dig them out. I
Yeah,
would love to be able to show them to the world. Chris Weston's origin story is,
yeah, the Dustbin
yeah.
Army. So I used to draw my own adventures of these creatures called the Dustbin Army. But luckily, I had a dad who loved comics, and
Mm.
my dad would just buy a pile of comics every week. I just mostly British comics. We didn't really read Marvel or DC, so I'd be reading them all on a weekly basis, like Hotspur, Bullet, Victor, which were the DC Thompson titles. But I'd also be reading Lion and Valiant, and before 2000 AD came along, the best one of all was Vulcan Weekly, which used to reprint like the best of IPC. So you get the Steel Claw, Trigon Empire, Robot Archie. So I kind of grew up on all the old material as well. And the great thing about my dad was we didn't just he didn't just buy me loads of comics and read them, but we'd talk about them as well. And we'd talk about, cliffhangers. What do you think is going to happen? Or, how do you think these characters are going to get out of it? And it, it was all part of the fun, really. And that's probably why became interested in writing and drawing my own, really, because I was already thinking about, how's the character going to get out of this?
It's
But it
one of
wasn't
the,
just
go on.
after you. Well, it was
Oh,
also it's not just me. all my friends are in the same boat, like living abroad with no TV. So they'd be reading comics as well. So we'd swap comics and read comics, talk about comics all the time, in the same way that other people probably talked about TV programs.
Kind of culturally, were you? Because I presume you're living on base or in
Yeah,
army accommodation.
yeah.
Culturally, were you very separate? You weren't picking up the
No,
local
no,
lingo
no,
and
no.
mixing with the local kids, right?
No, not at all. No, they had schools on the base. They had shops on the base. Unless you were going doing the touristy thing, you didn't really venture out there.
It's I think this is a really fascinating aspect of your life story and what it means for later down the line. Because,
Mm,
as you said, you were getting the reprints effectively of
mm,
older comics as well as the
yeah,
newer stuff,
yeah.
and it's something I have been fascinated about with your style. Is there's we'll talk about Don Lawrence in a minute.
Mm,
Um, but there's the obvious influence of Frank Bellamy,
mm. Jesus
Reg Bunn,
Basco, Jesus
Jason Black.
Basco.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
yeah,
was a big
and
influence on me. I don't know if an influence,
and
but he was someone I really admired.
but it's interesting that uh, a lot of these artists kind of were a little bit earlier. So the
Mm,
70s was seeing this change in styles, 2008 Action and 2000 AD come
mm,
along and kind of change things up. But you were getting a diet of some stuff that was slightly
mm.
older, and that
Yeah,
really
yeah.
seems to have had, like, in your artwork, that really seems to come through
Oh, I
that
hope so.
you're
Thank
you're
you.
yeah, well, you're looking back a little further than just what was being
Yeah,
published at the time, you know?
yeah, yeah. I hope so. I
Mm.
mean, still to this day, I think the Spider is one of the best looking comic book characters ever. And
I was going to ask, what is it about these kind of past masters that
mm,
really appeal to you?
I think it was uh, I, I think it's the density of the black on a page. You
Mm,
look at these old comics; they're really dark. Like your Blascos and your Reg Buns and your is it Solano Lopez and Eric Bradbury. They weren't afraid to really chuck the ink at the page and put in lots of shadows. And because British comics were black and white, I unlike American comics, the inking had to carry more of the information.
mm.
So they were really into the whole idea of doing lots of cross hatching and shadows and in, and compared to American comics, intense details. I think I think there's one thing my artwork's known for. It's that, but it probably comes from those old black and white
Mm.
comics, really. Yeah, I mean,
It's interesting.
you look at a steel claw page. They're really dark. So many shadows and man, the cross hatching that Reg Bunn used to do on his work is insane.
It's interesting looking back in the Rebellion archive now, particularly when we're bringing out collections of the Spider,
Mm, mm,
and we did some sort of paperback editions of Janice Stark, which was very much kind of harking back
mm,
to a Victorian,
mm.
almost engraving like style,
Yeah.
and just how noirish
Mm,
uh, a lot of these old British comics seem in comparison to the four color, very bright, very shiny, acres of space
yeah.
for the color to be in American comics. And wait, you mentioned you weren't getting any of the American comics. Can you remember encountering them for the first time? Has it always been just no? I stick to the British comics, or was did they come in? Did the
Uh,
American comics
well,
come
I
in later?
mean, I didn't really. They came in later, really. I didn't
Mm,
really see a lot of them until eventually. my dad left the army and we moved back to Britain, because the news agents, what they called the NAFI shops that used to have on army bases, they didn't carry American comics. So I only really got to see them once my dad finally left the army. We moved back to England, and again, I'd probably picked up the British reprints before I picked up the American books. So the things like Hulk Weekly or Spider-Man Weekly, or there was even a war one called Fury, wasn't there? And so if I was going to read American comic book characters, it would be through the British reprints, which again were in black and white. Well, I haven't really been brought up on American books. I mean, occasionally I'd see. I mean, I knew who Superman was, and occasionally, get a Superman book in my hands, or Batman. So I wasn't completely unaware. I think I think one of my neighbours had the Batman from the 30s to the 70s books. So that was basically. Oh yeah, they had the Superman one as well. So I used to read them, and but that's mainly how I knew American comic books. But I completely missed out on stuff like the X-Men, and I don't know what else was hot from American comics in the late 70s. Master of Kung Fu. Yeah, Neil Adams, but completely bypassed me. Didn't really catch it until years later.
Mm. And I mean, we've already mentioned the Dustbin Army. Tell us a little bit more about the comics you were making, because I mean, this became quite the thing. You wanted to make comics from a relatively early age, didn't you?
Oh yeah. I mean, once 2000, I discovered 2000. I mean, that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to draw on science fiction comic strips. So we had a school magazine called Equinox, the school magazine, and I used to draw a character in there called John Coyote, and it was basically he was someone who hunted robots, but secretly he was actually a robot, and which was, I think, every Future Shock ever at the time.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I mean, I don't know how long it's been since you've looked back on this stuff. Do you see the Chris Weston that was to be in those things? Are there
Hopefully not. No.
Oh,
No, I don't think so. No. Uh, I can't. When I just look at them, I think, oh, they look bloody awful. So I don't want to feel any connection to them whatsoever, really. I mean, I feel that about most of my early 2000 workers. Really, it's only really until I get to Killing Time that I think, I can bear looking at it. Everything up to Killing Time, I'd rather gouge my eyes out than look at them. To be honest, they're just
okay,
awful.
we have talked about this in the past. Is your shall we call it difficult relationship with your own work?
Yeah, yeah,
How
Y-
yeah, how I mean, you implied there that there was a, it is a spectrum, it's a journey, that there was a point when you could start looking at it. But
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I remember a conversation with you in the pub, um, probably a decade ago now, where you voiced sort of similar things. It's like,
yeah.
"Oh, no, I just can't look at it. I can't look at it."
No,
Where's that come from?
I think it's probably from the 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 brutal teachings of Don Lawrence, really, because he wouldn't sugarcoat things. If you tell you that if you'd done a crap drawing, he'd tell you it was crap, and he could be very, very tough. Uh,
Mm.
and Oh my god, I can remember once going to there was an exhibition at Sussex University where they had all the local comic artists had 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 their art framed up and on the wall, and me and Don were looking around it, and we came up to some of my work, and he leaned and close and looked at it, and um, and I thought he was going to say something nice, but he turned around and said, "You really can't draw, can you?" I was like, "Okay, wow, thanks, Don."
I mean that chimes with. I've dug up the transcription from our 2012 interview,
Yeah,
and I'm quoting you here directly.
yeah, yeah.
Don could be a git.
Yeah, and yeah, but maybe it's a good thing because once I pulled myself back together, I thought, well, I'll show him. I'm gonna start going to life drawing classes, and you know, I was so determined to win his approval, really, that instead of letting it destroy me, I it just made me more determined to improve. Really, I think,
Mm.
and it was only really
It's
once I got to
no, go on.
killing time. Well, only really once I got to killing time that, and yeah. Something that was mine started emerging. I think. I mean, up to then, it's just a weird mishmash of the people I'm into. I think it's only with that comic strip where finally that it all fused together into what makes me.
I think one of the things that I kind of tugs at the heartstrings when when you describe how caustic
Mm.
and unsympathetic, let's use that word, Don could be, was the fact that, I mean, this was one of your heroes, and
Yeah.
I seem to recall you telling me that it was literally a kid in your school, and it was
Mm.
like the lunch queue,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
happened to meet, and their dad was Don Lawrence, which
And
almost.
also the day before, and I think you might find this familiar because I've heard this happen to you as well. The day before, I'd written a letter to Jimmy Savile saying, "Please, can I meet, dear Jim? Please, can I meet Don Lawrence?" I never needed to post it because the very next day I bumped into his son in a dinner queue at the school. So history could gone in a very awful direction. If I'd actually posted it. But didn't
Chris,
you write to
Chris,
him and ask him to meet Rolf Harris?
yep, yep. I wrote to Jimmy Savile, and that's the, and it just so happened, and I didn't realize it as when I did that, that some kid had already
Oh,
been
they'd
on the
already.
show. They'd already done it.
Oh
It was this little
no!
girl, and
Oh no!
I'm not saying anything more, but yeah,
No!
I dodged a bullet. Let's put it that way. Um,
You and me both. So I didn't need to
yeah,
send the letter to Jimmy Savile. Thank goodness. Just bumped into skin, and then obviously I said, "Oh, please, can I meet your dad?" And and ashamed to say, uh, I did the full fanboy thing because he was like my favorite artist. This is the most bizarre coincidence ever. The Trigon Empire was my favorite comic strip ever. I just thought it was amazing. Which was reprinted in Vulcan. Uh, and I remember the day I actually picked up the comic, the Vulcan, and flipped through it, and I said, "Dad, can I have this comic?" My dad was already buying me a pile of comics already. He didn't really want to buy one because he sort of screwed his face up, and he says, "Let me have a look at it." My dad looked through it, and he got to try again because, yeah, yeah, we're buying this. It was fine. Yeah. So
yeah. And what was the experience, the experience of meeting Don at the beginning? Because I mean, you ended up being his apprentice for a year. Um,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I thought you were going to say assistant then. I think
no.
a lot of people assumed I was his assistant, but I wasn't. I was literally an apprentice. He was teaching me. He was basically uh, giving me a crash course in how to draw comics, and then first 6 months was a crash course in how to draw comics, and then the next 6 months was him helping me put a portfolio together. And
Mm.
in return, I paid him 10% of everything I earned from my first year as a professional. But still a bargain.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about this process and the relationship that came out of it, because as you said, he could be a very
Yeah,
tough taskmaster.
brutal. Yeah, yeah.
But were you mentioned, oh, I'm going to show you, but were
Mm.
you appreciative of it? What was your personality like at the time? Were you a meek boy? Were you confident? Was this a kind of literally kind of been crashing back down to earth, or You know,
I think
what was it
I
like
went
for you?
through I think I went through an arrogant young man phase when
Mm.
I didn't realise how crap I was, and uh, but it soon came crashing down, really. And also, people keep asking, why do you put so much work into your artwork? Why all the detail and stuff? And it's because I still feel like I'm paying back y- you know, the good fortune I had early on in my career in meeting,
Mm.
getting to work with my favorite artist and him helping me put a portfolio together that would get me work on 2000 AD, my favorite comic. I mean, that's so bloody lucky. I think so, so I think the rest of my career has just been trying to earn it, really. And the best way I could think of doing that is just by giving the readers value for money and giving them lots of lines to look at.
I mean, Freud would have a field day with this one, if I'm perfectly
Yes.
honest with you.
Yeah, I think that there was always a part of me that didn't feel like I really deserved it. That I got there by sheer
Mm.
good luck. So I've been trying to earn it ever since, and I still do to this day. Really, I
I
don't
mean,
take it for granted.
yeah, and it's fascinating. I mean, I I'd like to talk a little bit about how your style came about because,
Mm,
like you said, it draws on your influences. There's the obvious example, Don Lawrence, Frank Bellamy,
mm,
people like that. Um, but then also you in a way you're at exactly the right moment in that you've got this young upstart comic that comes along in the late
mm.
70s
Yeah,
where
yeah,
you have Carlos Esquerra, you've got Mick McMahon, you've got Bolland, um, and I always see you as part of the second phase because
yeah,
you're coming in what when was your first work?
yeah, yeah,
1988,
yeah, yeah. I mean, I
and
lucked out because
mm,
there was a vacuum of artists that need to be filled because all the golden age of 2000 talent have buggered off to work in America. Your Dave Gibbons, your Cam Kennedys, your Brian Bollins, they'd all gone, and then and I suppose 2000 was like hastily rounding up new artists to fill the void, and it just lucked out at the right time, really. I mean, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have employed me if they still had Brian Bolland and Mick McMahon and Dave Gibbons on the books.
well,
Never
yeah,
ended.
I think you're being a little hard on yourself, but you come along. There's obviously Liam Sharp, who was
Mm,
also
yeah.
an apprentice with Don Lawrence,
Mm,
and the two of you seem to have had different reactions to that experience in
mm,
how it's expressed in your artwork. So
mm,
particularly when Liam went on to work on the Marvel UK stuff, so
mm.
Death
Yeah.
Bed 2 and all that stuff.
He really flourished there.
Yeah, well, but also you can
Mm,
see that heavy hatching
mm,
that and his influence in that moment is clearly things like
mm.
the American comics at the time. So your Jim Lee and your Andy Kuberts
Yeah,
and people
yeah,
like that. Whereas you stuck very resolutely
yeah,
to what I would think of as much more of a kind of Britcore
yeah,
aesthetic. That kind of post Hampson
yeah.
Dan Dare kind of feel.
Definitely.
So you two had that different reaction. Then at the
Mm,
same time, you've got Steve Yoel who comes along,
yeah.
who has a very different style, much
Mm,
more stark in
mm,
how it's presented. So, this new generation of artists who come along, I never think of them as in any way lesser than what went before. Just different and all different in their own
yeah.
little right.
And then at the same
We
time, sorry, at the same time, the the nuclear bomb that was Simon Bisley hit the scene, and just completely wrote the rule book with doing full color artwork. and I think that everyone, the ripple effects from that, just were like a tsunami. That everyone was suddenly trying to do acrylic paints and ape his style. It was quite a momentous moment. I think I can literally remember the first moment I saw Simon Bisley's artwork, and it's at Brighton train station. I just bought a copy of Speakeasy, and then one of the news stories in there was, oh yeah, the ABC Warriors come back, drawn by this new artist Simon Bisley. I think there were like 2 panels of Bisley's artwork, and even then I thought, oh my god, it's a game changer. Everything we know has changed like overnight, and I think so. I think my generation of 2000 artists were really sort of knocked off our feet by Simon Bisley stuff, really. Um, Weirdly, I didn't really go down. I dabbled, but I knew going down that acrylic paint thing probably wasn't for me, and so I kind of stuck to the line art that was coloured. So I think Killing Time was probably one of the first comic strip stories I was doing, and I deliberately, made a decision not to do the acrylic painting thing that everyone else was doing at the time.
You're very early. Some of your very early Judge Dredd work, you painted yourself.
Oh, that's
So
right. Yeah.
the worm story.
Oh
Um,
God. Ah, Win. This is the stuff I can't look at. It's so painful. And what's even worse is whenever they're reprinted, the reprints are so bad. It's like, so it's bad artwork badly reprinted, and I'm like, oh, I just want to die when I look at it.
but
Sometimes I want to. I'd like. Sometimes I want to do a George Lucas and just redraw them, just and pretend that's how they always were.
that way madness lies, my friend.
Yeah.
I feel.
Oh, the crazy Barry, little Mo. Just
Mm.
so bad, really bad.
See, I'd love that stuff.
Do you?
Like,
Okay.
don't get me wrong. Like, I loved Indigo Prime and Killing Time and
Yeah.
everything. But yeah, no, I was always a big fan.
I think that's when my arrogant youthful phase came to an end. As I say, it ended pretty quickly because that's really early in my career. Because I can remember, because at the time I went straight from being done student to being, literally my first uh, comic strip was Judge Dredd. And if this goes back to earlier about me feeling I haven't really earned it, I think there's always been there was a part of me that think I hadn't paid my dues. I don't think you should go straight in on Judge Dredd. You should do about 20 future shocks before you do a Judge Dredd. And I didn't do those 20 future shocks. But eventually, after a stint doing Judge Dredd in Worms and A Night at the Circus and Crazy Barry and Little Mo, I think Richard Burton and Alan McKenzie just thought, no, he's just not good enough. And I think I was taken off Judge Dredd and at that point put on Future Shocks. And it was around about the same time that, you know, I heard that those words from Don says, "You just can't draw, can you?" And I think that was a very tough time to get through. I definitely felt like I'd been demoted for some kind. Well, I knew the reason, but it's definitely how it felt at the time. It's quite painful, but I knew it was the right thing to do because literally the week after my Dread came out, Dougie Braithwaite's debut on Judge Dredd came in, and then I just looked and I thought, I can't match this. This bloke's amazing, absolutely amazing. I'm not in the same league, so I then went on to Future Shocks, and that's when the real work started, I think. And
How do
like
you rebuild yourself from a knock like that though? How mentally, what were you thinking? You've already talked about, well, I'll do it. I'll show you, but that can only get you. Spike can only
yeah,
get you
yeah,
so far.
yeah, yeah. I think it's that line from an officer and gentleman, is it? Which I've got nowhere else to go. What was I going to do? Like, I had no qualifications, I mean, because I did terrible at school because I was too busy reading comics and drawing my stupid drawings. I had nowhere else to go. I had no other choice. Just had to roll my sleeves up and get on with it.
Just as an aside, what did your dad think about your choice of career, having effectively
Mm.
fed you the
Oh yeah.
material that got you into this bind in the first place? What was his reaction to all of
Oh,
this?
he loved it. Absolutely loved it. He took great delight in it. Yeah, yeah. Nothing but pride, really. Yeah. No,
Mm,
I've got no
mm,
complaints there. I think he was. I think the I I think there's part of him that really wished he was doing it as well because he'd constantly be coming in and giving me ideas, or when I was still working from the family home, he'd he felt like he wanted to be involved and stuff, and
mm,
um, sort of like if for some reason he'd like taken me to driven me up to a convention, I'd be, and I'd be setting my table, and I'd be with like, Dad. Okay, you can go now, Dad. Thanks. And he'd want to like chat to Steve McManus and Richard Burton. My son's doing all right, isn't he? Yeah, no, he's a proud
yeah.
dad. Mm.
Do you see a connection between your dad having been a mechanic
Mm.
and the way that you portray physical environment? Because it's very
Mm.
noodly is a
Yeah.
very silly word to describe it, but
Oh,
you've
I
got a
don't mind
clear.
noodling.
Yeah, you've got a clear
Yeah,
desire to relate the physical
yeah,
environment around
yeah.
your character. Do you see that as a straight line between those two things?
Well, it never crossed my mind before. I need to go away and think about that. I think it's more, like reflects my, yeah. I mean, because I also like prog rock, so I
Mm,
like noodly music as well. I like Rush and Porcupine Tree, so I like incredibly noodly music as well. So maybe I think it's just basically obsessive compulsive disorder. I think really, when you boil down to it, it's like
say no more.
never knowing when to stop.
Mm, mm, mm.
I'm not sure I've made that sphere look 3D enough yet. Maybe if I just add another layer of cross hatching, it will begin to look 3D. Whereas Mobius would just draw a circle and it looks 3D.
It's interesting that, you've been through this rough patch, and then you do the first Indigo Prime story
Yeah, and I think
for
that's when
Grader
something
and Bell.
clicked, and that's when I started
Yeah,
enjoying it. I think. Yeah,
right. And that
yeah.
was pure black and white as well, wasn't it? So there was
Oh
no
yeah,
pressure to do color.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it kind of sort of. I think they merged out Future Shocks, didn't they, at Indigo Prime? And so at the time I'd been demoted down onto Future Shock, so I was going through that journey, and then I just got this like these one-off short stories by John Smith, and then I came up with the idea for the Killing Time strip, um, and I said because I really liked Winwood and Cord, I really liked
Mm,
drawing them, and I just thought, yeah, I've got my own thing. This is good. This is kind of better than drawing Judge Dredd because I've made them up, and as any writers work with me know, I'm very interfering in uh, uh, the not so much the script phase, but the brainstorming phase. Sort of,
right.
I like to muscle in a bit and say, oh, I've got a really good idea. I don't think it drives some of my writers up the wall. Anyway, so I came up with the idea of Winwood and Cord on a time traveling train, and it's only in retrospect I realised it was pretty much the same story as my favourite horror film, Horror Express with Peter Cushing uh,
Right.
and Christopher Lee. Have you seen that? Uh,
Is which one's that? It's not the one with Telly Savalas, is it?
yes, it
Is
is.
it? Is it?
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
Well,
You know what?
they're
It,
basically they're on a train.
yeah,
There's a defrosted caveman who
yeah.
happens to contain this strange alien entity that wants to take over, destroy the Earth. And It's basically, as I say, I didn't realize I was just Killing Time is just Horror Express, but with a bit of Doctor Who thrown in.
The only reason why I saw that film, I had COVID, and I was
Oh right,
confined to this. I was confined to this. This was like last year, I think. I was
yeah,
confined to this room for 2 weeks. It was after I came back from San Diego Comic Con,
Eh,
actually, and I was scared. There was nothing on Netflix. I think we had Prime at the time. There was nothing
mm,
on there that I wanted to watch. And then I remember there's loads of old movies on iPlayer,
mm.
and it was just this random one. And I was sat at this very spot, just kind of noodling away at my laptop, watching it on my tablet, and just thinking, this is the like. And Telly Savalas comes in and
Yeah,
just chews up the scene, like not even
yeah,
bothering, just chewing up the
yeah,
scenery.
yeah.
Crazy,
It's
absolutely crazy.
amazing.
I mean,
But
I can see Hammer horror in your work.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, Max Woodward was my Peter Cushing, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think yeah, oh yeah, I used to love horror films. My parents, when I was really small, they wouldn't let me watch horror films, but my dad would watch
Mm.
them. So I would creep out of my bedroom at night and lie on the landing and listen to the horror film. And as soon as the film was finished, as soon as I could hear the closing title music, I'd run back in bed. So that a lot of my favorite horror films, I'd listen to them long before I actually seen them.
By contrast, many films I have seen but not listened to because
Oh right,
I've been on lots of planes and been more interested in what the person in front of me is
oh
watching.
yeah, yeah.
Um, it's the diversion. But yeah, it with and I don't know. Killing Time is one of my favorite 2000 AD stories, and I kind of don't want to over focus on it
Mm.
because I like talking about it. But you and John Smith had quite a fruitful
Yeah,
working relationship, and
yeah.
what was that one where you were bothering him? Were you talking on the
Oh
phone? Were
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
sending
yeah,
each other stuff?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I used to do it. I don't do it as much anymore. Rob will say, "Yes, you do, Chris," but but yeah, no, I always liked to chat with writers about the stories we're working on, and yeah, no, I definitely felt like uh, uh, me and John Smith made a really good team because I think I think
Oh,
I was kind of like this.
you've gone.
I mean, he had some amazing cosmic ideas. Because so when I told him, let's do when we record on a time traveling train, it's him who said, "Oh, if it's a Victorian train, then we've got to have Jack the Ripper on board." And I was like, "Yeah, brilliant," and thinking, so yeah, he'd always bring in the ultra violence. I definitely felt like he'd bring in the cosmic ideas, and I was the straight man who'd want to ground it a bit more. I think between the two of us, we made a really good team. Uh, I think I was hoping it could continue. I did badger him to let's do more stuff, but he just never got around to it really. And then I got
It's like you said, you know, on the face of it, you wouldn't necessarily put the two of you together, but
mm,
you absolutely play the straight man in that
mm,
relationship.
yeah, yeah. No, I thought we were going to be like an old married couple. Really, I thought we would still be working together in comics now. I really thought I found my perfect, creative partner. It didn't last long, unfortunately. Did we do anything
I
else
want
after
to talk.
Killing Time?
I don't think so.
No, no. He did a Firekind, didn't he, with Paul Marshall, which I thought was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about color
Mm.
because one of the things when I first read it when I was a teenager, that really struck me about your work on Killing Time was your unusual approach to color and attitude towards color. So, uh, not the strip starts off with what you would consider to be natural colors. You know, it's
Mm.
it's set in the Victorian period, so there's lots of leather and teak
And
and
sepias,
brass and
yeah.
yeah, and everything around. And then you use color to denote that there's something different about Winwood and Cord.
Yeah.
They do not belong there. They,
Yeah.
Winwood is purple.
Purple. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then as
Mm.
the strip goes along, you seem to play with color a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Things start getting out of control. And I want to talk to you about how you, as an artist, think about color, particularly having had that rough experience coming along. When
Yeah.
all of a sudden, kind of natural painting was being done, and then playing with it in your own way.
Mm.
How did you approach color at that stage of your career?
Well, I think at that point, uh, Brendan McCarthy was a big influence on me, and I really liked. I think he was doing Rogan Gosh at the time, and I just loved all that stuff. And I think I was probably just trying to mimic Brendan McCarthy quite a lot, and uh, and I was really into psychedelic music at the time as well. So I think psychedelia was creeping into my work quite a lot as well, and sort of I wanted, sort of Alphonse Mucha and flowers and stuff. I just embraced the weird.
It's as someone who just can play the straight man. You have had this kind of alternative aspect to your work. You know, you've got the psychedelic
Mm,
horror of something like Killing
mm,
Time, and then when you worked with Grant Morrison on The Filth,
yeah,
that that's a whole Freudian box just just waiting to explode there. Um,
yeah.
is this? Is this a way of you expressing something about yourself, or is it just happenstance that you happen to work on these particular projects? Because I think on the filth there was an entire orgy where it was all your face
Oh dear.
on the character, wasn't it?
Yeah. I don't really want to think about that. That's no one wants to think of an orgy with only populated by me, or even my wife. Least of all, my wife. Oh boy. Oh, I don't know really. I think I just like weird stuff. Really. I mean, it's strange because I've never taken any form of hallucinogenic or narcotic or anything. But so I can't really. But I've always loved psychedelia. Uh, I love the album covers and you know, you know the weird over detailed drawings you get on the sort of 60s album covers like. Uh, Oh God, I've forgotten that. What's the Beatles album for full? Sergeant Pepper. Oh God, I
You're
don't know
asking
what
the
it's
wrong
now.
person.
Yeah. Anyway, but that sort of stuff. Yeah. So no, I can't really account for it. Mm.
I want to talk to you. We talked a little bit about color, but also about process because um,
Revolver.
I right
Revolver is the
revolver.
full
There
stop.
we
Yeah.
go.
Yes.
There we
Yeah.
go.
That sort of Beardsley style drawings they used to have in. I think there's a real connection between sort of turn of the century art and psychedelia, which brings us back to Victoriana. And one of my favourite album covers was 25 O'Clock by the Dukes of Stratosphere, and it was basically lots of a montage of lots of drawings cut out of Punch magazine, Victorian drawings, all pasted together and painted in weird colours. And that's definitely, then that was the music I was listening to whilst drawing Killing Time, and that's definitely I wanted the artwork to reflect that sort of thing.
For me, there was also always a shade of Terry Gilliam's
Oh, yeah,
animations
definitely.
for
Yeah,
yeah
I
in your
love
work.
Terry Gilliam. Uh,
Mm.
I can I tell my Terry Gilliam anecdote?
Yes, yeah, what are you asking me for? Just get on with it.
Oh, it's amazing. Oh, I mean, I was the biggest Terry Gilliam fan ever, and he came to the Comedian in Brighton to show a advanced screening of The Fisher King and a question and answer session afterwards. And obviously, I mean, Brazil is one of my favorite films ever, so I was like booked my tickets instantly. But the music part of this question and answer session. Oh no, it was yeah. He showed a preview of Fish King, and then there was a full showing of Brazil, uh, and then a Q&A session. And afterwards, during the Q&A session, this guy stood up with like a shaggy Afghan coat and a black beret, and said, "Oh, Mr. Gilliam, I have come from Brazil, especially to thank you for making a film about the dire political situation in my home country as it stands today." So he was like, um, I, I haven't, I haven't made a film about that. And the guy goes, well, what's Brazil about then? Because well, it's about Britain and bureaucracy and the banality of evil. And this guy said, well, so why did you call it Brazil? And he said, well, that's the song that's in the guy's head throughout the film. And this guy went, and just sat down and he looked so crestfallen. I often wondered, did maybe Terry Gilliam set that up, but it wouldn't surprise me. Sorry,
Oh,
that's got
amazing.
nothing to do with my career.
No, 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 no. I'm all for tangential
So yeah, I just that illustrates
anecdotes.
how big an influence Terry Gilliam was on my work. Yeah, it's my eternal regret that I've never worked on a Terry Gilliam film. That would have been amazing. Yeah. I don't think it's going to
Yeah,
happen now.
yeah. I wanted to talk about process because I'm fortunate enough to own one of your original pages,
Oh, which one?
and it's one of your unpublished ones. I bought it at like the Bristol Con in I
Oh,
think what
wow.
2002, and it was for a. You told me it was for a Judge Dredd Legends of the Law, like an
Okay, yeah,
aborted
yeah. Oh, can I have a scan?
series. If I can dig it out, yes.
Okay.
But there are marks on that page that can only have been made by
A
either a
madman.
single bristle on either a single bristle of a paintbrush or
Hmm.
the smallest nibbed pen you could possibly
Oh
imagine.
my
And
god,
you talked
yeah.
you talked about being probably being a bit OCD
Yeah.
earlier. And
There's no
why
probably
do
about it.
you put so much detail into these pages?
Oh, I think we've covered this already. I think it's just earning it my place really, which I'd never felt
Well,
I had.
but it's I, I don't want to be a therapist, but you don't have to do that. like
No,
like
people keep
you
telling me.
you you hit that point many years ago.
Well, maybe after this interview, I'm gonna run out into the streets and go, "I've liberated, Mike has liberated me from the burden of detail."
But it's fascinating because there's yes, you may all think, well, I need to earn my place, but it's the nature of the detail that you put in there, in that you're creating a sense of place, you're creating a physical environment that surrounds your characters, and is that compensating for something? Is that just how you how you ensure that your characters live in a world that feels lived in? Is
Yeah,
it
yeah. I think it's the
is
frustrated film director in me, you know.
Right, right, okay.
I want to be able to create a whole world like almost a three-dimensional set. I want the reader to feel that these locations, could be built and walked around. I think. I mean, there's plenty of good artists. I'm going to name them who are way better at anatomy than me, and I can appreciate their skills, but they don't bother drawing backgrounds, and I just say it doesn't that doesn't appeal to me as much. I don't. I, I like. I don't. I've said this before. I don't see a panel as a drawing. To me, it's like a hole that's been punched, a square hole that's been punched through to another dimension. If you could just stick your head in and look around, you can see a whole world. That's the effect I want it to have on a reader.
I guess this is probably influenced by the kind of comics you were reading when you were younger. So,
Mm.
you look at the Trigan Empire, and
Yeah,
that feel
it's a film.
exactly that sense of,
It is a film, yeah. I mean, because when you've read the comic and you've put them away, and then you think about the comic later, you don't think of it as a sequence of panels. In your mind, it's become a film, and I'm just sort of like reverse engineering that process, really.
so, thinking about it from a process point of view, how do you start that? Do you sketch things out roughly to begin with, and then pencil heavier, and then ink, or do you rush to the inking
Uh,
stage?
well, it's changed over the years because it's so detail intense. Have to make shortcuts somewhere in order to make a living. So like the computer has crept into my work a lot more. Or if I've got to build a set, a setting, I'll do it in a 3D program. So then I can flip it around and look at it from different angles. Uh, I used to use a lot of photo reference, but I don't tend to do that as much as I used to. Uh, I mean, I still do it a little bit, and also I've got a huge library of like photo reference now from like 20 years of using myself as a model. So you know, I got if I need a shot of someone crouching down. I've got plenty. Now I don't need to set the tripod up and do that again.
I I've read an interview with you where you were talking about, kind of leaping around in a cape,
Oh yeah.
taking, like, timed photographs of yourself
Last
and
time I did that
all
was on
that
the Elm
lot.
Vistas strip I did last year. I actually brought a sombrero and what do they call those ponchos? Yeah, I got a gun belt. Yeah, I really got into character for that one. I mean, I think there's a real connection between drawing comics and acting. I think you've got to get into the character. It's not just what they wear; it's how they stand, what expressions they have in their face. And if you're using yourself as a model, it's sort of, it's you're gonna pull the face that the character is pulling. So you've got to get into it. Like,
Well, I'm interested in this because I know a fair few, artists who, have, like, a mirror next to their drawing board so they
mm.
can pull expressions, things like that. And, does this, how good are you at covering your tracks in that respect? Or is there always
Oh, I'm
an
open
element
about it.
of
I mean, if you, I
yeah.
mean, some of the like the collected editions of my books and in the extra material that they've published the photos of me posing. There's no point hiding it. Yeah, and Steve Yelwell said if he says everyone, it's sort of Steve Yelwell said if an artist looks if a page of art looks photorealistic, it's because the artist has used photos. A lot do it and pretend they don't. It's the only way to capture that. But as I say, because as I'm getting older, and I'm veering more towards my admiration now is leaning more towards McMahon and Bolland. I think I'm doing it less. I'm not so worried about things looking photorealistic anymore. I think that's
'Cause
the way my work's going.
it's for me, it's interesting that when you've done, for want of a better phrase, American series.
Mm,
Even if the writer you're with, with
mm,
Grant Morrison, for example, on the Filth, Warren Ellis on Ministry of Space. Um,
mm,
your aesthetic seems to me to work actually quite well. You get an awful lot of
mm.
artists who go over to the States and their aesthetic doesn't really fit.
Yeah,
Some well, McMahon,
yeah.
the American don't really the American market just doesn't really
They
get
didn't get
it.
it, did they?
Um, uh, Whereas with yours, I see your stuff as sitting kind of next to something
Mm,
like Alex Ross's work on Kingdom Come, where you've got that retro
yeah.
aesthetic,
I'm not as
and
good as
you
him.
did that series with yeah, with
He's amazing.
J. Michael Krasinski,
Oh, the
which was
12. Yeah, yeah,
well, yeah, and that's very kind of old school, kind of little bit of
yeah.
Flash Gordon in there, little bit of
Definitely.
Britcore, Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I put a lot of pains into making each character have a different face in that, because there's a lot of really good artists. Again, I won't name them, who are great at superhero anatomy, but every single character looks like the same person. They just got one cookie cutter face for every character, and you know, maybe they've got like two characters, a blonde person and a dark haired person. And when I was doing the 12, I really didn't want to do that. I really made great pains to make each one of the 12 superheroes look like an individual person. And well, the other thing I did is one of the characters had bare legs. It's just, for some reason, his costume had he just had the trunks and then bare legs because they were like golden age superheroes. And I deliberately gave him hairy legs because you never see that, because we all have hairy legs. And I mean, and also I don't think a superhero would be. I can't see a superhero shaving his legs. But people go, oh, I thought it was really gross the way you gave people hairy legs. But why would a superhero shave his legs?
I mean, this is where surely the notion of detail begins to enter some kind of mania,
Yeah.
because um, I've seen creators who've artists who've co-created a character and have given them lots of detail,
Mm.
like a I'm trying to think what the characters were now, but like a Spider-Man character where there's the webbing
Yeah.
is all of it. So every time they draw that character, they've got to draw all that detail,
Oh, that
and then
would kill me.
but you went and stuck hair onto a character's legs. You can't say, "Oh no, I'd
Oh,
never do that."
I know Spider-Man's one of those characters I never want to draw. It would kill me. There's just the having to get that costume absolutely accurate from different angles. I take my hat off to people like John Romita Jr. and Senior and Ditko, because the patience that must take, just getting every single line of the costume in place correct. Uh,
See, that's fascinating for a man who
yeah,
draws Judge.
yeah, that's very true. Yeah,
So
I can't
maybe
account
it's
for
a case of picking your battles.
it. Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't do a good Spider-Man, because Spider-Man's all about the anatomy, which isn't the athletic anatomy, isn't it? Which isn't my strongest point. I don't like drawing ballet dancers. I like drawing people who look like they're weighed down by life and got wrinkled clothing and got a bit of weight to them.
Mm, mm. Again, it feels like you're coming back to that notion of peeking through and seeing a real
Yeah,
place with a real person that has
yeah,
weight
yeah,
to it. And it's
yeah,
one of the things
yeah.
I've always liked about your Dread is he doesn't strike me as a quick person necessarily.
No, no. He's a
He's
bulldozer.
solid. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But he's got to a degree. He's got that litheness of a gunslinger,
Yeah, yeah.
which when you go back to the original Oscara and those early days, that's exactly what
Mm,
he was drawing on, that kind of spaghetti western
yeah,
kind of aesthetic.
yeah, yeah. Ron Smith did an athletic Dredd. His
Mm.
Dredd used to do like somersaults and cartwheels. Amazing.
So I can't remember who it was. Again, probably a drunken conversation in the pub. That Ron Smith drew the best dread butt.
I
Just like this
agree. Yeah,
peach of an arse.
yeah,
He seemed to put it in the strip far more than anybody, and everyone else shies away. They do dread from the
yeah,
front or the side, but very
yeah,
rarely from the back.
yeah. And
Which
the
yeah.
early Ian Gibson ones was Dredd looked very athletic as well.
Mm, mm. How would you describe your portrayal of Dredd, personally?
Mm, mm. Let me have a think. I mean, I think I think a weight. He's a weight. He's like a massive concrete block in Mega City One. I think I always try and catch his heaviness. Everything's got to look heavy about him. I think all that gear he's wearing, and that's what I liked about the Alex Garland Dredd, because he really caught the weight of the character, and the big boots. I think he's just got to feel really heavy, and I think he's got, and I think Dredd's got. I like it, I like to make him look like he's feeling the weight as well, the burden of the job, really, because he'd never admit it, but I always feel like it's got to be taking a toll on him somewhere, and I like to put that in as well. And I think that's kind of the way Rob writes him as well, as someone who's just had so much uh, injury over the years. He's worn out.
You did. I bring it up because you did cannon fodder with Mark Miller in
Yeah.
the 90s, which is, for my money, is very much Mark trying to do a Judge Dredd,
Hammersmith.
but
Oh,
in a
really? Yeah. Yeah.
slightly different kind of situation. But that seemed to give you the opportunity to indulge this kind of baroque nature
Yeah.
of really kind of, because you're were you raised religious at
No.
all?
No. No.
Because it's fascinating to think about
Mm.
what a Catholic upbringing did to Kev
Yeah.
O'Neill,
Right.
and then you did.
Kevin Fodder was basically Mark Miller's attempt at doing martial law more than Dredd.
Yes,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
that was
Oh,
literally there in his
we
first
could
pitch.
probably argue for a couple of hours about Dredd and martial law and how they all interconnect.
And talk about
But
complicated uniforms. I'm like, how did Kevin draw that uniform and get it right in every panel? So much detail. Bizarre. Look at me complaining about artists doing too much detail. Wow.
with cannon fodder, I mean that again, that was an incredibly
Yeah.
complex design character, but it seems like it was a strip where you were able to let loose a little bit. The for all of the
Yeah.
detail, and this was kind of the post Killing Time phase of
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
career. Um, you're you're
This is where I get
you're
confused about
going
the
over.
chronology. I don't know where it comes. Oh, was it right after Killing Time?
Let me double check.
I really don't know. Did I not do anything else in
Cannon
between?
fodder was originally 861 to 867. Killing Time was 678. So yeah, quite some time after Killing Time.
I must have drawn something else in between, surely.
Unfortunately,
Hmm.
the list I've got in front of me isn't in chronological order.
No, no.
So there's the Rogue Trooper. You did some Rogue Trooper stuff, didn't you?
Right, yeah.
Scavenger of Souls.
That was after Cannon Fodder. Oh, no. That
No,
was after Cannon
that
Fodder.
was it 8?
Yeah,
Ugh, I'm getting bogged down now. Hang on. They're around about the same time. So Cannon Fodder was 861 and Scavenger of Souls was 873. So they're around about the same time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm. No, I say I don't really remember much about that period, really. Yeah, Scavenger Souls wasn't the greatest of script, was it? Uh,
I mean, yeah, there's probably it is. I mean, Michael Fleischer's passed away now, but there's probably
yeah,
a retrospective to be done
I think it was a
on his time.
mistake. It was kind of a
Mm,
mistake
okay.
sequelizing War Machine to begin with, really. I mean, it was a good complete story, wasn't it?
Mm.
Uh,
Well, 'cause, I mean, with the Friday stuff, I think you did a thing for like the Rogue Trooper annual.
yeah. Oh god.
Hang on a
Yeah.
sec.
No, don't get it out. Oh boy. Yeah. Thanks.
No, don't worry. I'm not going to hold it up to the camera. I
No.
just want
Yeah.
to make sure that I'm recalling it correctly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, here we
That
go.
came first.
Yeah. So that was what?
Yeah.
That'd be 1990.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't hold it up to camera, but I was
No. No. Oh, I know.
none of that stuff.
Yeah, they should have just left it at War Machine, really. I think, and then
Right,
gone back to the
right.
original Rogue Trooper. I think because they tried to turn
It
the War Machine into the original Rogue Trooper. I mean, me and Mark were like part of that process. Like, oh, can you bring back his? First of all, can you bring back the biochips? Can you bring back the Mohican haircut he's got? It's just basically, oh, quick, turn it back into the other Rogue Trooper. I didn't
well,
seem to be any
I'm
point
not
really.
I'm not going to step on the toes of my colleague Steve, who for the 2000 AD deep dive is going to go back and
Okay.
do episodes on all of that stuff. But what I wanted to ask you was with this 90s phase, you know, you've done Killing Time. Um, there was more Dread. There was Cannon Fodder. Where were you kind of mentally and emotionally at this time? How did you feel about how your career
Mm,
was progressing? Because 2000 AD was undergoing a lot of changes at the time, and this
mm. It was.
precedes
They
your
went
your
through several editors in like a very short space of time, wasn't it? Didn't they?
yeah. But for you, this precedes your work in America. So how did you feel
Yeah.
about it at the time?
Oh, it's strange because I always my career plan was to work in 2000 and go to Europe and try and get work in Europe, like Don did. That's what I was always kind of being set up to do, really. But then this like Swerveball came in with Mark and Grant, who were all for the future is in American comics, and let's form a team and go out to the follow in Alan Moore's footsteps and follow on continue the British invasion really and make our fortune out there. Only one, I think. Only
How did that
Mark.
work out?
Pretty well for Mark Miller. not, not so much for me. Yeah, no, I think Mark kind of sold like himself as a package to if we can get work in America, we can bring all these amazing artists like Steve. I'm not saying amazing about myself, but like Steve Yoel and Duncan Fegredo and myself. I think we very much like sold as a whole big package to DC Comics. Yeah, but yeah, no, that was quite
How
exciting.
did you yeah, well, how did you deal with that transition?
It was just surfing, really. Just going along for the ride, really. Seeing where it would take me. Um, I didn't. I didn't really. I definitely felt like Mark and Grant were leading the charge, and I was just happy to follow along, really. And they seem to be really ambitious people who knew how to i- impress all the right people. So I just thought, yeah, yeah, this trend's going in a good direction. I think I'll stay on it.
How did you fit in terms of kind of process time? Because a lot of artists find
Mm.
the grind of a monthly book very
Oh
difficult,
yeah,
and you're doing this very detailed artwork.
yeah, yeah. I think I knew that was the deal, and I knew I was going to have to pencil and get an inker. Uh, so I knew what I was getting into, but I don't think I realised the toll it would take on me, and just the feeling of sending in unfinished work just became awful. Just sending in work I wasn't pleased with, just because you had no, you didn't have the time, but also to me, unless you've inked a page or coloured it, it's not finished. So the constant feeling of sending in what I felt like was shoddy and unfinished work just got to me in the end. It just really, really lowered my morale. And that's usually when I phone up 2000 AD and think, oh, do a couple of Judge Dredds, please. Can I come home? They take me back like the prodigal son. Yeah. So no, I can't say it was that enjoyable.
'Cause you've got quite a substantial body of work. I mean, I haven't got it up here, but
Yeah.
downstairs I've got the complete filth, and that is a chunky book. Like, you were on that
Yeah.
book for quite a period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's 13 issues, isn't it? One more than Watchmen. So
Yeah.
13 issues. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I was late on that either. Uh, I think I pretty much kept that to the monthly uh, schedule. Obviously, I had Gary to help me, but it was tough. It was really tough. And then I carried on with that vein. I did a few other things. Started going a bit wrong on Lucifer. I think I was beginning to uh, just become depressed. Really, by the time I got on Lucifer, uh, actually Lucifer was before the filth. I told you I get confused. What did I do after the filth? Was it Fantastic Four First Family and the 12?
Uh, the Invisible Starman, JSA, Lucifer, the
Yeah,
Authority.
that's when they tried to turn me into a superhero artist. I think a couple of editors there, they liked my artwork and thought, wow, I like what he's doing on the filth. He should be doing mainstream superhero books. It just wasn't me though. It, I just, it did feel a bit like working in a sausage factory at that point.
Well, 'cause you'd done the Invisibles with Grant as well.
Yeah,
It wa and,
yeah,
it's, yeah, mostly in kind of volume
too.
2.
Yeah,
Is there an aspect of you need a writer who's keeping you interested in things to maintain your
yeah,
morale on some.
definitely. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And I like to feel part of the team as well. Uh, I mean, if I'm just doing one aspect of the work, I like to be part of feel part of a unit. I need a support network. I either want complete control or I want a decent support network. Really, I mean, when you're penciling and inking and colouring yourself, you've got complete control, which is the ideal place for me. If I cede some of that control, but I want to know it's going to the right people.
How did you how do you square that with something like, the 12? Because you had a hard time on the 12, didn't you?
I
And
did,
it's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's just I think that's just the wheels just came off really on my American career. Uh, it, they were all. I mean, both JMS and I took our turns to play the villain, be the one who was late. But the combination of the two of us, I think, pretty much killed what could have been a really big book. Um, there's there's no problem between me and JMS. We still keep out. We've actually uh, good friends about it now, and I've done some work for him recently. But at the time, I don't think the editor was doing his job properly, keeping everyone informed, keeping everyone informed of the problems that are going on behind the scenes. It was a disaster, and it's only a. I think if I can take any credit for it, I think my sheer will held it together. I think I kind of, at some level, took over editing that bit. I'm sure the editor will disagree, but I felt like I was the one holding that book together at one point, and which didn't do me any favors with the other creators on the book, because I probably turned into a bit of a bossy git. But there was a vacuum of leadership, and I don't know. I think I tried to fill it, but I did it badly. I did it really badly, and pissed off some of my colleagues. But then it shouldn't have been my responsibility. I wasn't an editor, and yeah, what was I to do? Just stand back and let the book crash and burn, or piss some people off and make sure it got finished? I think, you know, at the end of the day, I think I did even though it wasn't a success, didn't have the sales it should have had. You know, at least it still exists. At least it's finished, and not become one of those projects that people said, "Oh, you know, that's one of those series that never got finished." It got finished, but there was so many annoying things. Like, uh, so we got it finished, and then literally the day before it was released as a collected book, someone in the editorial team, pretty high up, did this interview and said, "Well, I can tell you one thing: we're never going to do a book like the 12 again." I'm like, it's coming out tomorrow as a trade paperback, and you're slagging it off. Heaven's sake! So yeah, it was a tough time.
Does an experience like that, in its own way, also knock your confidence a bit?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's when I think I pretty much thought, well, I'm quitting comics for a bit, and then I went off to do some film work, like on the Book of Eli and all those films that I worked on that didn't get made. You know,
Well,
eventually.
I wanted to ask about your experience doing a Akira,
Oh yeah,
because you know.
that's just one of many. I think I counted 9 films I worked on that never got made at one point. But it was a nice break from comics because I say I'd reached rock bottom really. I didn't like the division of skills. Yeah, I didn't like having to send in unfinished artwork. By which I mean my pencils. Uh, and also I kind of lost because I lost a massive. I had a massive drop in income doing American comics because I was doing it blue line, sending the blue line. Someone else was thinking, no original artwork really existed. So I lost a big drop in income through not having original art to sell, and I just worked myself into the ground for very little money, and then the films offers came along, which was nowhere near as much work for like 10 times the money. I just thought, yeah, thank you very much, I'll do it.
And I mean, you mentioned a minute ago about that support network, and of course, when you're involved in films, where you know, because I think you did storyboards on the Book of Eli. Was that right?
Story was a little bit of concept work, lot of character design. I was pretty heavily involved in that. It's probably one of the highlights of my life, really. I mean, it's definitely I can watch that film. Not that I have done for about how old is it? 15 years? I don't know. I haven't watched it for ages, but you know, even when I look at like a still, when a still crops up on social media, I go, yeah, that looks like my work. I can remember drawing that exact scene. It's pretty much an accurate reproduction of what I drew in the storyboards, and I really got into it. And to me, I was making a 2000 AD film. For me, I was like, yeah, this is going to be the cursed Earth. He's a 2000. Eli for me was like a 2000 AD character, this cool dude with a machete. It
How,
was
how did how did you come to be how did you come to be working with Albert Hughes?
through the writer Gary Whitta. I knew the writer who wrote the screenplay, and he'd constantly been pestering me to draw some comics he wanted to write. And then one day he asked me, basically, he said, "Oh, I'm sending this script off to my agent. Could you draw a picture?" This was back in the days before digital scripts, when they were still hand printed. Can you draw a picture to go on the front cover of the script, just to make it a bit more eye catching? And so, yeah, I drew a picture of Eli, the lead character, and the director picked it up purely because he liked the drawing on the script. He said, "Yeah, I like this," and he liked the script. And he goes, "Yeah, I want to make the film, and I want to get the guy that did the drawing on the front cover to work on the film." So I got it through that.
And
They,
and,
they,
and I guess also that's the to a degree the polar opposite of the situation you found yourself in comics, where all of a sudden it's like actually people do want to work with me. They do value
mm,
what I do, you know?
yeah. I suppose so. In definitely in that case, in Albert Hughes' case, yeah. And I sort of became Albert Hughes' go-to guy for a while.
So with something like Akira, I mean, we've all the way through this entire conversation has been shot through with the notion of kind of like weight of expectation.
Mm,
So Don's weight of expectation of
mm,
and your weight of expectation on
mm,
your own shoulders,
mm.
and then you get something like Akira, which is part of the lexicon of
Yeah,
comics and also animation.
yeah,
Um, and then you're working on it. How did you, what was your thought process? Because it's
yeah,
that's quite a hell of a pair of shoes to step into.
yeah. I didn't seem phased really. I mean, I love Otomo's artwork, uh, but you know, but I didn't feel any need to ape him, and the director didn't want me to ape him. And as far as he's concerned, he wasn't remaking the animated film. He was making a new adaptation of the original um, graphic novels. So we weren't referring to the animated film as well. It just felt like something completely new, really.
Were you working alongside anyone from manga or anime? Because
No, no, it's
it's
just
one of those
me.
things that, you all right, okay, just you. Wow, okay.
Yeah, I pretty much storyboarded pretty much the whole film. It's like you can almost publish it like an alternative version of like the first book of Kira, except by Chris Weston rather than Otomo. And they don't look anything like each other. They look completely different. But I don't think I had the. I wasn't awed. I mean, if I was going to work on a Judge Dredd film, it'd be like, oh my god, it's the best day ever in my life. But I didn't have that round affection for Akira that some of the fans have. For me, it's just a job, and I wasn't trying to please. I wasn't trying to please Akira fans. I was trying to please the director.
Right, right. Well, so this was kind of my next question with films. You're a small part of a much bigger
Mm,
operation. So rather than you're a freelancer just sat on your own at home or in a shared
mm,
studio, whatever, where you're working away. Um, you're part of a structure.
Mm.
And I think because you worked on Star Wars as the Star Wars
Mm.
films as well, the new ones, and I think you were alongside Jock on one of
Mhm.
those, weren't you?
And
Was it the Last Jedi?
Sonya. Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that was 10 years ago. It's gone so
How did you?
quickly.
Yeah, how did you feel that process went? You know, was it one where you had that kind of support network around you?
Yeah, I found working on uh, Star Wars really stressful. I mean, at that point, uh, Force Awakens hadn't even come out when we were working on Last Jedi, and it's like the first Star Wars film for what was it, 15 years or something. I felt the weight of expectation on me far more than I did when I was on Akira or anything. I just felt like, oh my god, I'm doing Star Wars. It was. I found it very very stressful. Uh, just and the whole process of driving up to Pinewood, which was a long drive for me. So I'd go up on the Monday morning, stay all week, sleep in a B&B around the corner from Pinewood Studios, and then go home on a Friday night. So I didn't see my family much. Yeah, it was tough. It was intense. Very very
And
intense.
was this kind of was it concept work, character
I was in the
design, or
costume
a bit of
department.
everything?
I was in
Costume
the
department,
costume
right? Okay.
department. Yeah, I mean all these things overlap. Um, Pretty much every alien in the uh, casino sequence, their costume is designed by me. I seem to I seem to be given most of the aliens in that film to do. Uh, it was going to begin with. It was going so badly. Just every drawing I turned in was rejected, and I could. Jock thinks I'm making this up, but I felt this guillotine slowly descending on my neck. I just because I knew if I didn't get something they like, drew something they liked at some point, they'd just replace me. And then eventually I drew some costumes for the caretakers, and I got the they were like the frog nuns that are on the planet where Luke Skywalker is living, and uh, and they asked me to don't just draw their costumes. Can you like world build their society? Like draw one a butcher, draw a fisherman, and that. And that's when it clicked for me. And uh, Bowman Trumpet, the director, Ryan Hughes, absolutely loved them, and I just thought, phew, I feel like they saved my ass on that film, really. And after that, I was fine. And then I think they twigged, yeah, Chris is the weird alien guy, so I got most of the alien guys to design costumes for, and which was fun because my job involved going down to the creature workshop a lot, and that was the best place to be in Pinewood. Really, it was amazing seeing his enormous sculptures and animatics. I love that.
'Cause there's a nice kind of circle in that in the once you were doing the world building,
Mm,
once you weren't just doing something in isolation,
yeah,
once actually you were crafting a physical space,
yeah,
that's when you kind of came into your own, and
yeah, 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 yeah.
that seems to be you're the guy for that, creating
I
worlds
think
rather
so.
than
Yeah,
necessarily
blowing my own
looking.
trumpet. Yeah, I think that's what I'm good at, and that's why I'm better at doing stuff like the filth than I'm doing Spider-Man because I can build a world. Something that no one's seen before. Yeah.
And to bring things full circle, like I said at the beginning, you've kind of um, done a fair few Judge Dredds in the last few years, including writing and drawing
Mm.
one which had the fantastic pun on uh,
Is it Death
the
of
Dredd
Danny Cannon?
movie. Yeah, Death of Danny Cannon. Before anybody comments, Dan dash E
Yeah.
Cannon, very important. Was that story just popped into your head, or was it something you've been thinking about for a while?
Oh, I think about my Dread stories but for years before I eventually draw them. Yes, any Dread strip I've written has been in my head for about 10 years. Honestly, uh, it just takes me a while to pluck up the confidence to write to Matt, going, "I've had this idea for a Dread story." Uh, yeah, yeah,
Despite everything, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a mystery, really. Yeah, well, I don't presume. I don't want to take anything for granted. As I say, I don't want to presume, and I don't want to behave like. Uh, when I can, I have been a diva, but I don't want people to realise I'm a diva. I think there's some people I work with who think I'm a diva.
And just to kind of bring things to a close, now at this point in your career, having done stuff in movies,
Mm,
having had this varied career in comics, and you've done stuff in advertising, you've done
mm,
prints and something other. Uh, uh, Looking back, but also looking forward, where
mm.
are you now, kind of psychologically,
It's a
mentally,
good.
emotionally? Where are you now?
I
Are you
think
more comfortable with yourself now?
I think I'm getting worse. I genuinely think I'm getting
Oh,
worse. Yeah, yeah. No, I've never uh, I've never been less sure of my abilities. It's bizarre. It's a constant struggle, really. The lack of confidence. I think it. I think it. uh, I mean, if you look at my bank account, there's not much celebrating me from a homeless person on the street. And it's bizarre. I said to my wife the other day, I said, I don't really get how this has happened, but I get more praise now than I've ever had. Uh, but my bank account's never been emptier. It's a struggle. It hasn't got easier, and my confidence doesn't has never really risen very high. I mean, I feel like if something happened, like I finished this comic strip called Paranoid Gardens for Dark Horse. That's creator owned, and if Netflix phoned up and said, here's 200 grand, we want to make a TV show, I'd be the most confident man in the world. I'd be going, yeah, I'm brilliant, amazing. But that hasn't happened yet. I'm still hoping that will happen one day. Yeah, I just don't think I've had this success to merit a big ego, really.
okay, if you insist.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's plenty of people way more successful than me in the industry.
But the interesting thing, what would success look like for you? Is it that the
Mm,
TV adaptation or something?
not worrying about paying next month's mortgage would be a sign of success, and I do still worry. I mean, it's not. I mean, Britain's been through a lot in the last decade. That as the cost of living has gone absolutely through the roof, but unfortunately, my productivity hasn't. It hasn't risen to match the inflation. I'm earning less money than I used to, and I need to sort that out.
A dour note to end on. So, in terms of the future, is there a dream project? Is there, because
Oh,
you've done lots of different things, and you've had the
mm,
chance to indulge yourself on you know the obvious things like a bit of
Yeah,
Dan Dare here and there. You know, you've done
yeah.
your Judge Dredd.
Well,
Um,
I think one of the few artists that have done all the classic Dread characters, aren't I? I've done Robo Hunter, I've done Slain, I've done
yeah,
Nemesis, I've done Dread,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've done Rogue
Mm.
Trooper. Someone said they could put out a special edition of 2000, featuring reprints of of all the stories drawn by me, because I think I'm one of the few people that's done them all. Probably Henry Flint has come close to doing all. He's done Robo Hunter. I've done Strontium Dog as well. I've done all the classics, so I've ticked a lot of the boxes. But yeah, I get ideas all the time about stuff I want to do. But the trouble is, I never get off my ass to do them because I'm just too busy doing hyper detailed work on current projects. Really, I haven't, I, I haven't got enough time in my life to do all my dream projects. Really, I mean, but I can tell you this: whenever I think of dream projects, they're always 2000 AD things. It's never like one exception. Rob and I have pitched a series to DC, uh, which would be a dream project. That basically involves Batman and Superman, so that would be pretty cool. But for dream projects are usually 2000 AD for me. I'd really like to do more Dan Dare, but they're not owned by 2000 anymore, are they? And I'd really like to. Do I detect a
Oh
deal?
no, no, no. We've never owned Dan. Well, certainly
No,
Rebellion have never owned Dan Dare.
no. It's owned by
The
someone who
Dan
doesn't
Dare
really know what to do
Corporation.
with it.
I, I, I shan't comment on that.
But now, if I was to do Dan Dare, I'd want to do the Bellardinelli Dan Dare.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd really,
Like
really like to do
living
it.
axes
Just go
and kill a
mental,
planet.
and give him that the Ziggy Stardust, because he looked like Ziggy Stardust, didn't he? I'd just go full David Bowie Dan Dare. It'd be amazing.
You see, that's an interesting point about your career. Is yours and Bellardinelli's careers overlap?
Oh yeah,
Like yeah, when you did your first Dread, bear with me. I did write it down. Where is it? Oh, yeah, there was Zenith, Tyranny Rex, and Moonrunners, which is
right.
like the tail end of Bellardinelli's
Yeah, yeah.
career. And I do see some Bellardinelli in your work,
Oh really?
particularly on
Yeah.
stuff
Oh
like,
yeah.
particularly on Killing Time. I mean,
Yeah,
come on.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I was a big fan of his. In fact, when I drew my one issue of Slain, I wanted it to be Bellardinelli's Slain. He was who I was looking at. I got all my best of 2000 out and was looking at Bellardinelli's Slain. I didn't want to do a McMahon one. I didn't want to do a Bisley because eh, that's the Slain everyone else goes to, particularly the Bisley one. That was me trying to do an homage to Bellardinelli, but I didn't do a very good job. Just not good enough anatomy. You need to be really good at anatomy to do Slain. I can't do those big guys with muscles. I can only do wimpy, worn out people with wrinkled clothes.
Is this because you're using photographs of yourself,
Yes.
Chris? Is that what we're
We've
saying
got to
here?
the number. Yes. Yeah. I think we've hit the nail on the head.
You know what?
I've
What a
never,
point to end on. There we go. We've had the
yeah,
breakthrough.
yes. For some reason, I've never done a strip featuring Pat Mills characters that I've been proud of. I did a Nemesis. My Nemesis was rubbish. You'd think I'd do a good Nemesis, wouldn't you? Because it's chock full of Victoriana and mad detail and weird shit. I did a dreadful Nemesis. That feels like
I just think you need to be a little bit crazy, really.
yeah, yeah.
That's what it boils down to.
That's another thing that feels like I don't know. I know there's never ever going to be any more Nemesis or any other Pat Mills material, but that definitely Nemesis feels like unfinished business. I feel like I need to have another go at that and do it properly next time. I'd really like to do a Hammerstein strip. I recently did 2 paintings of Hammerstein just for fun because I really love that character's design. If there's any way we could get a Hammerstein strip going, I'll be well up for that.
See, you come back to all the noodling technology, all the physical, the spaceships and the robots and everything. I see the connection, even if you don't.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've taken
Right.
up enough of your time.
Oh,
This has been brilliant. Thank you so much for chatting to me, Chris.
no
I've had a
worries.
wonderful time, and
I hope I didn't say
I
anything
look
that would get
forward.
me cancelled.
Oh no, I'm sure you haven't, but I'm very much looking forward to more Dredd from you. If
Okay, yeah. And hopefully a Blood and Early Dandanet there or Hammerstein.
you never know. You never know.
Yeah.
But yes, wonderful. Thank you so much for that.
Okay, no worries. Cheers.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to Chris for being so generous with his time. Hope you've enjoyed it, Earthlets. It was great to just chew the cud, just get an insight into Chris's psyche and how he views his work. I mean, I like I said at the beginning of the episode, I absolutely adore his artwork, always have, and it's great to see him always trying to be the best artist that he can be. I guess that's the best that anyone can hope for. But we'll be back in a month's time, Earthlets. Don't forget that every Wednesday you can listen to me and Chloe talk rubbish, really, in orbit every Wednesday. We examine not just the weekly issues of 2000 AD and the monthly issues of the magazine, but also talk about our favorite themes, our favorite stories. We've got guest interviewees who come on, and we've got some really great interviewees coming up in the future. So make sure you don't miss that. And the second Saturday of every month is 2080, the deep dive with my colleague Steve, where he goes into the archive with a comics critic and discusses a classic from 2000 AD from the last almost 50 years. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, whether you're on YouTube or whether you are listening to this on the podcast app of your choice. We shall see you in a month's time on the 2000 AD Creator Tapes. Hope to see you every Wednesday on In Orbit every Wednesday. And until then, Earthlets, Splendid Verthrig.